Hi, my name is Lula Moges. I go by Lula for short, and I am the chef and author of Inibla, Recipes from an Ethiopian Kitchen. I'm originally born and raised in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, the capital of Ethiopia, and I've had the pleasure of learning some traditional dishes from my grandmother, aunties, and my mother, which I have essentially put all together, everything that they have taught me in this book that I have put together. Enibla in Amharic, the direct translation means let's eat. So very similar to the Italian mangia. Anytime we see each other, we say enibla, or if we're sitting down eating and somebody walks in, we invite them and say enibla. So it basically means let's eat or let's eat together. A little bit of background of the culture. We do love to eat with our hands, and we also love eating together. So everything that involves festivities or sad events or whatever, it will always be around food. That is our culture, and that is also one of the things I love the most about it. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. So today we're going to make two recipes. One of my favorite recipes. First one's going to be the tikal gomen, which is the cabbage stew. And then the second one's going to be tibs, another very popular dish in the Ethiopian cuisine, which is a beef stir fry. Getting started first with the tikal gomen, we will have the mise en place already prepped. So we'll have the cabbage, the potatoes, some diced onions, garlic, jalapenos, carrots, our oil and water, and of course turmeric, which is one of the main things that we need for the spice for the dish. So to just go ahead and get started, we will start with a medium-sized pot, and then we're just going to turn that to medium heat, and we're just going to add the onions and the oil, and we're going to saute this. Okay, so. And I'm a big fan of vegetable oil and olive oil, which is what I usually tend to cook with. I'm cooking right now with vegetable oil. And this dish is one of the staple dishes that you will see in Ethiopian cuisine, mainly because not only do we eat them during Lent season, it will always a nice addition to any main course that is normally spicy, to kind of balance it out. So while this is sauteing, just to give you a little bit of background. So in the Ethiopian culture, or at least predominantly, everybody has a different religion, but it's predominantly does have Ethiopian Orthodox. So I'm personally Ethiopian Orthodox, and we do fast every year for Lent. So what that entails is very similar to the Catholic Lent. Instead of giving up one thing, we essentially are vegan. So no beef, basically no meat, no dairy, and it's it's 40 days long. And so essentially I'm vegan for 40 days every year. So because of that, even in the book, you'll find a lot of recipes that say vegan and vegetarian. And it's finding different ways to elevate vegetarian food and making them hearty. And then when it's not Lent season, we still make the same dishes, but we put them on the side. Like I said, we do kind of tend to eat with together. So normally we would have a tray where we put the injera down, and then we put the different sauces. And so let's say the dorowet, which is the chicken stew, one of our popular dishes, that would go in the middle, and these vegetarian dishes would still go around. So essentially, we do make these dishes year round. And it is one of my favorites. I do tend to make it often, mainly because after a long work day, it does help to the fact that you can make this dish within 30 minutes. And then I normally eat it either with over rice, because sometimes it's just light and easy. If not, I also do eat it with injera. And injera, which is our Ethiopian flatbread. The recipe is also in the book as well. Is one thing that's going to be a little bit of time consuming, essentially because you need to actually make it and let it ferment and wait, and it takes a few days. But it is gluten-free flatbread. It looks kind of spongy and it has a little holes on it. I call it like these little pockets to grasp all of the flavors. And it does have a little bit of a sour taste, mainly because, and that is perfect because a majority of our dishes are so bold and flavorful that you need something to balance out and counteract the to kind of bring everything together. I've had some people ask me, why don't you, elevate it and add garlic and stuff to the injera, but all of the stews and dishes are already so flavorful. You need something to be just sour and like almost like a balance between the spices and the dish and the different dishes. So this looks like it's coming along just great. I just saute this just until the onions just start turning golden brown. And then we are gonna add our potatoes and garlic next. So while the onions are still keeping sauteing just a little bit longer, just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background. So growing up back in Ethiopia was one of my favorite times of my life. I grew up just surrounded in a lot of food culture, obviously because it is part of the Ethiopian culture as well. But in my family specifically, my parents were very festive. We basically had get-togethers at our house either every weekend or every other weekend, where we invite over our aunties, uncles, cousins, and friends. And we would barbecue and grill. The women would be in the kitchen cooking. Unfortunately, I was a little bit young, so they wouldn't let me do a lot of the cooking back in the day. It was mostly, like helping peel, like I'll just help peel the eggs or put meatballs together. But I still got to be able to see and experience it. And it was mostly because we do cook over open flame, and it was for my safety. But that just kind of sparked my curiosity for the love of food and the love of cooking. And so that is kind of how everything started. And also on the weekends, we would go visit my grandmother, who would definitely sneak me in the kitchen and show me how to cook things as well. For the potatoes, I actually use Yukon Gold potatoes. I know a lot of people are used to using russet potatoes, but when it comes to this dish, please use these, just the golden potatoes, only because russet potatoes are great for mashed potatoes or anything that's like on that level. Because if you end up sauteing them and adding them in here, by the time the entire stew is done, they're going to start being mushy and kind of sticking to the cabbage. So this will stay firm throughout and still have the texture that you need. So I highly recommend using the Yukon Gold potatoes. And then the onions are about golden brownish. We're going to add the potatoes and then also add in the garlic. I'm a huge garlic lover. It's kind of like, if I could put garlic in every single dish I make, I would. Sometimes I don't, but so we're just gonna saute this together, and we're just gonna let this cook through just for about 5 minutes or so. We're just looking for the potatoes to kind of cook through a little bit as like al dente. Once each side of the potatoes has cooked, then we can move on to the next step. Again, Yukon Gold potatoes is the way to go. Highly recommend it, just to avoid from them getting all mashed up and turning into a mashed potato dish. And then as far as following up, continuing on my life story and journey of how I came here. So when I was about 12 years old, my family and I relocated to the United States for better education and future for us, for the kids. Our parents moved us to first place being Dallas, Texas. And so when we moved there, and of course, the way I was raised and the way things were back home kind of changed because we didn't have the maids that helped cook and clean and whatnot. So then I kind of got more of a hands-on training. So, my dad was like, okay, well, time to help your mom in the kitchen. So then I started slowly learning and actually getting that hands-on learning that I really needed. And it was amazing. But of course, with all of these recipes and dishes, which I do love dearly, the big problem is all of our dishes do take um, a long time. Some stews take 2 to 3 hours, some longer. So starting in college, when I was really busy working full time and going to college full time, I just really, really craved my traditional cuisine, and I can't always be eating out. And of course, and also where I went to uni, I didn't have a lot of, it wasn't available to me as easily. Like I would have to drive 3 hours to DC to get it. So then I started experimenting and trying to figure out how to kind of make these dishes a little bit quickly. And so that it kind of helps me to still have my traditional cuisine, but not sparing the time that I should be doing homework. So this has been about 9 or 10 years of recipe testing and just perfecting. And that's kind of how Inivla came about. These are all traditional recipes, just a little bit sped up without compromising flavor. I'm not compromising. This is not an Americanized version. It's not a fusion. This is all traditional recipes, just with a shorter period of time. All right, so the potatoes are starting to look good. And next we're gonna add the carrots and the turmeric and a little bit of salt and pepper. So for the turmeric, I have like 2 tablespoons. It's a very powerful ingredient, so be careful just in case, like, wear an apron so it doesn't splash on you. It's a very unforgiving spice because if it gets on your clothes, it's going to be quite difficult to get it out. And then we're just going to mix this all up like this and just kind of get everything all blended in. All right, and then just going to add the salt and pepper. And this is going to be to your taste. I can tell you, for me, I do love my black pepper. So you're going to see me add a little bit more than what most people do. I just love, love, love the taste of black pepper. It just gives it that little extra kick. All right, and we're just going to mix this all in. And then we're going to follow it up with some water. Now, my biggest recommendation for the water is if you're going to be eating this with injera, then half a cup is more than enough. If you're planning on putting it over rice, feel free to add like 3/4 of a cup or even 1 full cup, because then it's just going to make it saucier and it will just give it that extra juice. It's a preference thing. I love that extra juice to go on top of my rice and just kind of get soaked into the rice. But anywhere between half a cup to 1 cup is perfect. All right, so we're just gonna add that half cup of water and we'll bring this to a boil. Turmeric is actually one ingredient that I can tell you, aside from berbere, which is an Ethiopian spice, and I'll talk about that very shortly. We use turmeric a lot, mainly because we do have a lot of spicy dishes, which is because of the berbere. So in the recipe, you'll see 2 versions of almost every dish. So it will be berbere, which will be like a spicy stew dish or whatnot. And then in the bottom, it will explain for a non-spicy or a milder version, this is how you make it on each one. You're essentially substituting turmeric instead of the berbere. So we do tend to use it in the cuisine a lot, which is perfect because you can still get the same dish and same flavor without having to, if you're spice sensitive, you don't have to miss out on it. Now that this is coming to a boil, we're just gonna add our cabbage. And this is just 1 head of cabbage. And we're gonna mix it well. I know it seems like a lot, but cabbage is very, very similar to spinach. Once it cooks through, it's just gonna cook down. And it also is very nutritious. So that's also very helpful. Just gonna mix this all in. And then I'll also add the jalapenos. For this, I'm using 2 jalapenos that have been deseeded. But if you love your dishes spicy, which sometimes, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, most times I do, you can, keep the seeds in. If you want it to be even extra spicier, you can essentially also do it with serrano peppers, substitute it with serranos instead of the jalapenos. Okay, it's getting nice and mixed in. Let me go ahead and add the jalapenos. And essentially this dish is done. That's it. You just basically mix it all around and you're going to just let this cook down. We're gonna lower our heat to low and we're just gonna cover it and let it simmer. We're gonna stir occasionally. Lost one. We're just gonna simmer it occasionally and let it just cook down for about 10 to 15 minutes. And just like that, you have a dinner ready with less than 30 minutes. And, for especially the people who are working a lot and come home and they're just don't have the time to make dinner or take very long times making dinner, this is perfect. All right, so while this is cooking through, we're gonna do a little bit of multitasking, and I'm just gonna move this over to the other side of the stove so that we can continue on to the next dish. Right, so now that we've moved this over, we're just gonna cover it and just let it simmer and let it cook through. And we're gonna check on it and if once in a while, occasionally, just to kind of stir it through. And for now, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next dish. So the next dish that we're gonna make is called tibs. It's a beef stir fry. So it's gonna have 2 pounds of chuck roast, some beefsteak tomato, 1 beefsteak tomato that has been chopped, some jalapenos, some chopped onions, garlic, oil, salt and pepper, my favorite ingredient, rosemary to finish it off, and then of course berbere. So to get started, we're just gonna, I highly recommend non-stick pans, but we're just gonna sear the meat on medium heat. Right, so just put this in here. Okay. All right, so we're just gonna let this kind of sear and get seared the beef on all sides. So while it's doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you about the favorite ingredient of the Ethiopian cuisine called berbere. Berbere is a spice, a mixture of spices, and it all depends on who makes it. Or like if most people, especially in Ethiopia, do make it at home, so every family kind of has their own recipe. But they do also sell it at stores and markets and online as well. So it originally, like a majority of the time, has between 20 to 26 ingredients, predominantly being red pepper, fenugreek, cardamom. It also has like other ingredients, and everything just kind of changes based on who's making it. Like versus like if my one auntie makes it one way, my other auntie makes it a different way. So it's a little bit different, but all with the same concept of kind of multiple spices ground together to create this beautiful, beautiful ingredient here. And we do tend to use it with a lot of our dishes. All right, so now this is getting all nice and seared. So tibs in Amharic, direct translation, is stir fry. But we do stir fry. You'll see in the recipes that it does say like, chicken tibs and goat tibs and lamb tibs and all of it. And there's a whole variation in different types of ingredients that kind of are in it. And the biggest reason is because we love tibs. I mean, we love our beef stir fries, right? But when you say tibs, like if you go to a restaurant and you say, I'd like to order the tibs, it automatically means beef. So we don't ever say beef tibs, we just say tibs. So if you order tibs, it will just be beef. But then if you're specifically wanting a different type of protein, then you would say, I will take the chicken tibs or the lamb tibs, and so forth and so forth. This is also one of my dad's favorite dishes. When my mom would travel for work and he was responsible to feeding the children, this was his go-to easy dish, just because, you know, it's a very manly dish, just kind of sauteing some meat and veggies, and then you're done. So now that this is kind of seared on all sides, we're gonna add in the oil. For this, I'm actually using olive oil. I love the flavor of olive oil that goes with the beef. And then we're gonna add in one of the medium yellow onion that's been thinly sliced. So we're just gonna add that all in there and then mix it all up. Just kind of let it blend in and kind of cook through. Oh wow, everything is starting to smell really good right now. Okay, and then we're just gonna let this kind of simmer and cook through a little bit. And then also, not to forget my other favorite ingredient, garlic. I do put garlic. Now, if you're not a garlic lover, feel free to use, I mean, I'm putting only 2 cloves, but feel free to use 1 or just completely omit it if you don't like garlic. I just love the flavor of garlic. I think it brings everything together. But again, that's a personal preference. So if again, it's one of those things. And the same thing with the onion. I feel like with the beef tibs, the yellow onion just is milder and gives it a nice flavor to be sauteed. But if you don't like yellow onions, feel free to substitute it with the red onion. Now, granted, the red onion is going to kind of give it a little bit of a sweet flavor, so be careful with that, and especially how much you use. But again, another easy substitution. So let's just quickly check on the other one real quick, just to see, just kind of mix this all up together. Oh wow, this is starting to smell so good. And you see, it's almost all the way fully cooked down. And plus, not to mention, cabbage is a very, it's an ingredient that's very nutritious as well. So it does have its vitamin Bs. So on top of being flavorful and easy to make, it is also very healthy. So that helps. Okay, we're just gonna cover it some more. Just let it cook down some more. All right. And then we're just gonna go back to the tibs. So next we're just gonna put in, now that this is all kind of put together, we're gonna add the berbere. So I do put in 1 tablespoon of berbere, but please feel free to put in, you know, 2 or 3 if you want it to be extremely spicy. And if not, if you are very spice sensitive, feel free to just use less, maybe do half of a tablespoon. I'm just gonna put 1 full tablespoon for this one. And then also mix it all up. One of the biggest things you wanna make sure is just mix it up so that the powder does not clump up. Just kind of let it all come together. And we're gonna follow this up with the jalapenos and the tomatoes. And again, the one good thing about the different variations of the tibs is if you like it spicier, there's one called awaze tibs, which is made out of, it's like a hot sauce, Ethiopian hot sauce made out of the berbere that would just be like a very spicy dish. If you don't like spices at all, then you can also do the derek tibs, which is like almost like a dry beef stir fry. And so there's different variations and a different thing for everybody. All right, so I'm gonna put in my tomatoes, followed up by the jalapenos, and then we're just gonna saute this all together and just mix it up. Oh wow, that's smelling so good right now. All right, we're just gonna cook this for about 3 to 5 minutes. We're just looking for the tomatoes to kind of soften up a little bit. And then we're gonna add our salt and pepper and rosemary, and then the dish will be done. So again, another very, very quick dish. One thing that I'm also gonna recommend is if you are vegan or vegetarian and do not want to do any um, meat or proteins, I do highly recommend using, instead of tofu, using tempeh. Tempeh has that consistency that can be sauteed and still stay firm. And I actually, it was a friend of mine who is a vegan who loves my book and is like, oh, all of these recipes look so good, but I don't eat meat. And so he ended up, doing it with tempeh. And then he sent me all the photos, and I'm like, oh my God, now I have to try it. And I did. So that's not mentioned in my book, but I recently found out about it. So, and because I used to always just recommend tofu because that was like the easy substitution, but tempeh substitutes so much better. All right, let's look at this. And this is nicely cooked. It's all mixed in together. And then you see, there's the juices at the bottom, and followed by the potatoes are fully cooked now. The carrots are fully cooked, and this dish is done. I'll probably just let it saute for a few more minutes. But other than that, a dish is done and ready for dinner. So I'm gonna give it a few more minutes just to kind of fully blend in. Ah, but it smells delicious. I wish you could smell it right now. Okay, and then back to our tips. Let's see what's going on here. Oh yeah, this is smelling delicious. So it's like the two recipes flavors just smells both. They smell so good. And just gonna give it a few more minutes to just kind of blend in. So back to what I was telling you about Ethiopians eating with our hands. So we do love to eat with our hands. And one of my favorite traditions that we do is called gursha, spelled Gursha. And there was actually a very funny episode a few years back on The Simpsons where Marge figured out and found I guess she found an Ethiopian restaurant, right? And then the episode is she's there and then she sees people like feeding each other and she's like, what is this thing? And then falls in love with it. And it's actually true. So as a culture, we do like feeding each other. It's almost like a tradition slash a form of respect. So to give you a perfect example, if I'm in my house and my auntie and my cousins are there, I will put a bite size with my hand, and I would feed my auntie first because she is obviously older than us, and we do have show respect to her first, and then she would then feed me, and then I would feed my cousin, and it always is in a form of threes, and it basically means that the direct translation is always like the first is for our love, the next our friendship, and then for our everlasting love, and then we're constantly going back and forth. Ooh, so this is coming along great. All right, so I see that the tomatoes have already softened. So now we are gonna add salt and pepper to your taste again. And like I said, you're gonna see me put a little bit more black pepper than normal, but that's just a personal preference. So I always just say, just do it to your taste. And we're also gonna add my favorite ingredient, the rosemary. I love this herb. And one sprig of rosemary is more than enough. It's such a powerful herb that just the one will be perfect for this entire pot. So don't think that because, just one's not going to be enough for this. Yes, it will. I promise. It is more than enough. So we're just going to mix this all up. Oh, God, it's so good. And We'll leave the rosemary to just kind of soak up in those juices. And we're gonna lower the heat we're gonna lower it to low, and we're gonna let it simmer for another about 5-10 minutes. And we're gonna cover this and let it simmer for everything to just kind of warm through together and all the flavors to combine. And then you're all done. Then the dish is complete. But now this dish is fully done. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the heat for this one. And your cabbage stew is complete. Ah, this smells good. I promise it probably does taste really good, but we'll find out in a second. Oh God, it's quite delicious. Okay, this is all mixed in. And this dish is done. And in about 5 or 10 minutes, the other dish will be done as well. And now you've made 2 dishes with less than combined of like 45 minutes. But if you wanted to just do one, you would have been done in 30. So, and it's the same thing with the tibs as well. So these 2 quick recipes are kind of like my go-to, especially when I'm like having a long work day, coming home late, and just trying to like have a quick dinner. So it just makes it easier for everybody to make, and it's all fresh ingredients, and especially the ingredients that I got from Melissa's Produce are the ingredients that I used today, and their vegetables were amazing to use for this recipe, all vibrant and fresh. So it just made the dish even easier to make. All right, so while this dish is completing, I just wanted to kind of show you what injera is. So this is the Ethiopian flatbread that I said that we do, if you want to just look at it. So we do eat most of our dishes with this. And so what ends up happening is we will scoop out the actual ingredient on the plate. Oh, perfect. And the tibs is ready as well. So we can just go ahead and turn off the stove. I'm just going to remove the rosemary, and then I'm going to put this yummy goodness on my plate. So just like so. And this is kind of like a little bit, you can put more or less to your choosing. And what you will do is just grab a small piece of injera, so like so. And then you just kind of put a little bit of your choosing. I'm putting a little bit of the cabbage, a little bit of the beef, and we're just going to make a little gursha, or like a little bite size. And then you're all set, and you just get to enjoy a delicious meal with cabbage stew and tibs and nivla. Thanks again, everyone, for taking the time to join me today. And thank you for Melissa's Produce to hosting this and featuring nivla, the recipes from Ethiopian Kitchen. These are all very, very easy recipes to kind of add to your weekly dinner repertoire with all the ingredients. There's a list of where you can find everything, and majority of them you can just find at your local grocery store. And I hope you enjoy all these recipes that I put in here that have been passed on to me from my family, and all the love that's been put in it. And nivla. Thank you.